Coming up on episode 84 of the Behind the Back podcast, this is going to be a Kings only pod. They are now in the play-in and place the Dallas Mavericks in round one at the Golden One Center. Ben and I break down the matchups that we're looking out for, how this season ended, talk a little bit about that before talking about who we might play in round two, who we'd rather prefer if there's a round two for us. So we talk about all that. With that being said, y'all, let's get it. All right. Welcome back to another episode of the Behind the Back podcast. We are your hosts. I am Marcos Conan Negron, and beside me here, as always, is Ben, the Jet. Reds, Ben, how are you, brother? How you been?
You know, I've had better days, but all in all, I'm doing pretty good, and I'm breathing. I got 10 toes down, so, I can't complain too much.
I love that. All right, so as you guys heard in the intro, this is just going to be a King-centric pod. We did a whole NFL thing last week. We're going to do a whole NFL thing next week. But this week, it's all about Sacramento. The Sacramento Kings are officially in the play-in. The play-in starts. They finished the season 40-42. The regular season has come to an end. So we have a game tomorrow that we need to talk about. But before we do that, we got to kind of touch on the regular season. You went to the Kings game on Sunday, the last game of the season against the Suns. So how was, we had lost the two games like we talked about against the Nuggets and Clippers. We kind of figured that was going to be the avenue. And the 9th seed was on the line in this game. Had we, lost, we might have not have gotten in and might have fallen to 10th, and we would have been traveling to Dallas. But we ended up with a win, but you were there. So what was the vibe in the arena knowing that it was kind of a game that mattered a bit?
So during the game, it was fun. I will start by saying the energy and the atmosphere in Golden One Center, it felt like a playoff game. Everybody knew the implications going into the game. Before the game, it was a little more, I don't want to call it tense, but you felt a little more, excited for the game, and you wanted this team to come out and just kick some butt. But as the game went on, they were consistently putting up the Mavericks versus Grizzlies score in the arena. And obviously, if the Mavericks lost that game, whatever happened in the Kings game wouldn't matter. And of course, Mavericks lost by like 30 points, and they were down by 30 for a vast majority of that game. So the feeling in the arena as the game went on was, well, this game doesn't have as much pressure, but that pregame pressure was cool, and you felt it. And I went with my girlfriend. Shout out to my parents who actually got us the tickets. It's a last minute thing. They believe that they send us to any game, we always end up winning. So I don't know, call it a superstition, but went with Daniela, and we had a great time. We had a little pregame bite at the Tom's Watch Bar, which is that new restaurant right there in Doco. Really good stuff. And the atmosphere, dude, like just talking to people and feeling everything that was going on. It was popping downtown. Like Doco was jumping from about 10 a.m. on. Like there was tons of people. So it was a vibe.
Oh, that's great. And honestly, again, going into it, we weren't sure what was going to happen, but obviously we come away with the win. So that's great. We finished the season 40-42. So 2 games below 500. I wanted to take a second before we talk the play-in matchup and everything like that. I kind of want to just take a second. You and I have spent some time bashing on this team for the past, I would say all season, but especially these, past couple months when things kind of took a turn for the worse. We've kind of been, critical, and we're worried about the long-term future of this team. So if you could put this season in particular, if you could describe this season in one word, what would you give? What would you give for the Sacramento Kings?
Just one word?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, there is so many words I could put to this. Considering everything that happened with the departures of players and coaches and general managers and what have it, underwhelming is a word that definitely comes to mind. But I don't think I'm going to use that one. I think I'm going to go exhausting. Because if I'm being honest with you, keeping up with this team through all the changes throughout the year, and watching this team, sweep the Cavaliers, but then choke against a team like the Washington Wizards. It leaves you scratching your head, and you're just at the end of the day, you're just exhausted because you don't know the direction that the organization's going. So, exhausted is the word I'm going to use.
I love that. So, kind of in that same vein a little bit, I'm not going to use exhausted, but I think the word that I could use to describe this season would probably be, I want to say, I would say either lost or directionless. It's less about the finished product and more about the future product of this team. And this season, with everything that happened, all the turbulence, by mid-season, it kind of felt like this season had no direction. This team had no idea where they wanted to go, and they made moves that were difficult and probably not the right decision. And now we're potentially trapped in another, purgatory scenario where we're just going to be a middling team for the foreseeable future with just a weird cast of players. So, this season was disappointing, but, given the way the whole play-in is structured, it gives teams like us a chance. And for some fans, it's like, oh man, the agony of having to survive another week versus, oh, okay, now we have a fighting chance. So we're in the play-in versus the Dallas Mavericks, and we've talked about this. This is a scenario that looks like the writing was in the wall that these two were going to match up for the past week and a half, 2 weeks now. So how confident are you going into this matchup with Dallas? Because if we really think about it, this is going to be a different version of the Dallas Mavericks that the Kings have seen all year. The Kings are 3-0 against the Mavericks. We've played 3 different versions of this team for basically the whole season, and we've won every time, obviously. But I'm worried that when you look at the players on this Mavs roster, who's going to be potentially there's a lot of players, questionable, all that stuff. They've been dealing with injuries all year, but it looks like their main guys are going to roll out. Anthony Davis, PJ Washington, you got Klay Thompson, Spencer Dinwiddie. So you're going to have veterans in there who can make a play, who understand the situation. So how confident are you in this matchup against Dallas?
I feel pretty good about this matchup. I feel like the Kings have, I want to say if they've got their number, like you said, they're 3-0 against Dallas this year, and they saw 3 completely different teams. First game, obviously Luka was still on the team, but he was injured, so we didn't see him. Second game, it was that was the Christmas matchup, or the around Christmas time, where it was a pretty close game all the way through. Goes to overtime, and DeMar and Malik take over in overtime, and just Debo game winner, right? And then round 3, completely different story. Like, Kings came out really slow, but then they outscore the Mavs in the third quarter, like 34-16, and extend an already great lead to a massive advantage and just cruise.
Yeah, and I
So
think that was the Kyrie injury game too.
correct.
Yeah.
So we've seen completely different matchups throughout this year, but every single time, the Kings have found a way to get that win. So I feel good about it. But the Anthony Davis thing has been on my mind the last 2 days, because I think about the 4 times that Domas has seen Anthony Davis this year. Obviously, it was in a different jersey when Anthony Davis is over in LA. And we saw the Lakers what feels like in the first 2 weeks of the season all 4 times. But the Kings lost to that team every single time. And Anthony Davis played a really good part, and a large part, in why they ultimately beat the Kings 4 times. So I'm wondering what that matchup is going to look like, and that's going to be like a key matchup that I'm keeping an eye on. If you can contain Anthony Davis and force the guys around him, his supporting cast, to beat you, a guy like Spencer Dinwiddie, who lately has just been wanting to chuck up anything and everything that goes his way. If you're forcing him to be the guy to beat you, I think you're going to have a really good chance at this game.
Yeah, and listen, the last time we played them, they didn't have the center depth that they do now. That they have essentially their 3 main starters from that forward center
Right.
position back, including PJ Washington. So you basically have your full rotation. So they're going to feel a lot more physical. I think this game is going to be in general a little bit more physical. They play two bigs. They've been having Anthony Davis at the four, and running them with either Gafford or Lively. So spacing be damned, it's going to be very tough. The paint's going to be clogged. It's going to be an interesting experience for the Kings. I do think that fortunately this is at home, and a lot of our main shooters like Keon Ellis like to shoot the ball well at home. I do think that this is going to be a game that if we're not hitting those outside shots, this is going to be a slugfest, and it might be closer than we think. But in terms of the physicality of it all, I don't know about AD in terms of how healthy he really is. And obviously we can't ignore the fact that, he's been in and out of the lineup. They've played 9 games with him total. And they're 6-3 with him in this lineup. So it's not like, they've proven to be effective when AD's in there, but I wonder, how healthy is AD? The past couple games, he hasn't been moving the same. So if the Mavs are asking him to shoulder the majority of the load, my question is going to be, can he handle that? So I do think, despite that, we will have. I want to say we'll have an advantage, but then you think about Klay Thompson, and last time he played us at the play-in game, and he was 0-10. I just don't see that happening again. And they got guys who can make plays on defense, and Najee Marshall is going to be a game wrecker, and get in the grill of DeMar or Levine or whoever they decide to put him on. This game is going to come down to the Kings really needing a big game from either or both DeMar or Zach. One of those two guys needs to have a really huge game. DeMontis needs to be consistent in the post and just keep battling. And I think we're gonna see a little more Jonas in this game too, to compete with a little bit of the size that they have if they give us trouble. But I think honestly, if we put Keegan on Anthony Davis, I think we'll be fine for the majority of the game if they want to go big. But I feel good about this matchup. We should win. We have won all year against this team, but we never know which version of the Kings we're getting. Maybe that works better in a one-off scenario. Maybe
Right.
The Kings are kind of built for the play-in where there isn't consistency involved. It is a little bit more random. But overall, that I'm feeling okay. I feel like we should win this game. But right now, the thing that worries me is just how healthy is AD, and will we get going tomorrow? That'll be the big deal.
Yeah, and another thing I'm keeping an eye on is Zach LaVine in this game. I'm also watching Zach LaVine and Debo because they've both been in these playing games before. But I'm specifically looking at Zach LaVine because he's been known to disappear in these big games. And I mean, I would know firsthand because he's been one of my favorite players for years. And anytime I see him on a bigger stage, I tend to tune into those games, but he is just awfully quiet in those games. And so for me, one of the biggest things that I would need to see in this game is I need to see him be aggressive to start. I need to see him look for his early, because if he gets cooking early, dude, nobody's going to keep up. That's the thing about Zach is he's that kind of player that just keeps building as the game goes on. I'm forgetting you'd know this. I'm forgetting the badge, the activating badge in 2K. The more you shoot, the more likely it is to go in.
It was either the microwave scorer or something like that.
I think it was the microwave.
High volume shooter. You give the guy more reps, and then he gets hotter the more he shoots.
It's the volume. Yeah, it's the volume shooter. So he's got that at like Hall of Fame level. Mm-hmm. That Hall of Fame level, volume shooter badge. So that's what I'm looking for. Is I need to see him go get his early. He had an early impact against the Suns in game 82 of the season. He had 10 early points, but then he was completely silent in the second quarter. And, came out in the second half and got some quick buckets, but he ended the game with like 16, 17 points. Like, it wasn't much at all. So I want to see him go get his early. I want to see the Kings spread the floor. And I would like to see them run the ball through Domas. That might be asking a little bit too much, considering since the All-Star break, we really haven't seen this team go back to running the ball in the offense through Domas. But if you can get your big man involved and get him comfortable, if you can get Zach LaVine feeling comfortable, and any of these guys who can just really have a major impact early in this game, it's going to favor you in the long run of this game.
Yeah, a good point with Domas too. I think one thing that he benefited from specifically against Phoenix was hitting 4 for 4 from three. I do think seeing the ball go through in the last game of the season is going to be very big if we need him to try and step up and take a couple shots in this game. If they're going to go double big and maybe clog up the paint a little bit, I believe there's going to be opportunities for him to shoot. And we're going to really need him to take those open ones if they're open. I don't want to see a Domas kind of regress and like be afraid. I want him, and agreed, LaVine needs to be the one taking the majority of the shots tomorrow. I do think, I don't think anyone's going to be mad. Like, that's kind of the whole point of, trading De'Aaron Fox or Zach LaVine, right? Like, if you're going to lose, you might as well go with your player who you're paying the most, taking the most shots and taking it upon himself to be, the best player on the floor. And I do think that maybe this is an environment for LaVine to get going. So yeah, just like you, I will be looking for LaVine to get going early and just kind of maintaining. And that'll be the question of like, how much impact will DeMar have in this game? Will he force things if he's not getting things going early? That'll be the things to pay attention to, because I can imagine in this spot, DeMar taking the first few shots pretty early, if he gets a post up that he's really excited for, and he might, take over there too. And he could play pretty well. He's played well against Dallas all year too. But, I would be more content if LaVine is the one taking 25 shots over DeMar tomorrow. So, but on paper, we should be, we should win this game. We have the better overall team. If you had to give me a score, and I know it's harder in the NBA than it is the NFL to do some of these scorings, but if I think the over under early on we're only 4-point favorites, which in theory is not that much.
Mm-hmm.
So they anticipate it being a closer game. So do you think it'll be a close game tomorrow, or do you think that we're going to have a chance to run away with it?
I think we've got a chance to run away with it, but I think we've also got a chance to lose. I think we've got a chance to win at the buzzer. This team is extremely unpredictable, and we know that, as Kings fans, right? We've watched this all year long. We've watched this for multiple seasons. I think the better chance favors the Kings running away with it. And by running away with it, I'm talking 8+ points. That's not necessarily running away with it, but you're in control, right? And that's the thing that I'm essentially banking on this team doing. You have the home court advantage. You have the best teams, best fans in the league. Like, this is going to be a loud atmosphere. This is a, fan base that has been searching for something to cheer about with, passion and energy all season long. And this is going to be the biggest game of the season, whether it has the weight that we want it to or not. So the arena is going to be loud. The energy is going to be there. I expect this team to ride off that energy and just come out and strike a punch. So I'm thinking, if I had to put a score to it, I think they're actually going to buy in defensively. I think they probably hold the Mavs around 100. So I'll call it 100 on the dot for the Mavs. And I'm going to say 112 for the Kings feels about right.
Yeah, that I think if everything goes the way we hope for, we should maintain a lead. The Mavs are going to fight. They're going to get a few runs, and we'll just take a few of those punches and pull away. That's obviously the goal. We could very well lose by 20 because our shot doesn't fall and we don't defend anybody, or we're not contesting the way we should. But I feel pretty good about, what we're going to get. I know that, the big man position is going to be the matchup to look out for with Sabonis and AD, and whoever really wins that matchup, might be the one setting the tone for the rest of the game. But I, as okay as I feel about this matchup, I do anticipate this team winning by at least, I would say it wouldn't be audacious to say they'd win by at least 10, even if they are favored by 4. So I do think I'll give it. I don't trust our defense that much. I know they'll step up, but I also don't trust them that much. I would say this game will be won with our offense, and we will probably win like 119 to like 107, something like that.
I like that score.
Yeah.
So before we get, because I have some keys to the game here,
Perfect.
but before we kind of dive into that, I want to talk about a few of the things that were said by the players and by Doug Christie, or rather by Trey Lyles and Doug Christie to the media this last couple of days that I thought really stuck out. And I want to kind of, run these off you and bounce these off you, see how you feel. So Trey Lyles on the State of the Kings heading into the plan, he says, the resiliency of this group is really showing the last week and a half. We're coming together as a group at the right time, and I don't think our record represents how good we are. So there's two things that I'm going to kind of bounce off of here. The first thing is the resiliency, right? Do you believe that, I'm asking you now, do you believe that this group is showing some of that resiliency? And do you think that, that season long resiliency and the fact they were able to position themselves, or is this, more of like a recent thing? And then building off of that, they're coming together as a group at the right time. Does it look like they're coming together when we think about some of these losses recently that they've faced with teams like Washington and some of the close games against Denver where you feel like they really could have pulled away but didn't happen, right? So the resiliency, how do you feel about that, and do you feel like the group is coming together at the right time?
I do think, and contrary to what I might have, how I might have felt on this pod, we when we talk about things that happens in sports, most of the time it's about the result. But like, there's so many games where we might have taken like a haymaker and we do bounce back and give ourselves a chance to win. It's just that we don't complete the job. And that was the case for so many games this year. And sometimes it worked out, sometimes it didn't. I do think that no matter who was coaching, whether it was Mike or Doug, there was a level of resiliency where like these guys wouldn't quit even if they were down big. Like we saw that in Detroit. They were fine. They saw that against Denver too. Like Denver was in control the entire game, but we were still able to make it a game at the very end. And obviously the Clippers game was just, and the Clippers, we just can't seem to get over that hump. There's always a close game with them, but like we're hanging with them too. So there is a level of resiliency that comes from, maintaining and hanging around. And I do think in these kind of scenarios, in the play-in scenario where, if you can just hold on and weather the storm, you'll have a better chance of surviving in these kind of games. Even if you do get down big, this is also the games where like, yeah, if you get up big, you're also in a spot where you can get lackadaisical, feel too confident, and then next thing you know, you're out of the playoffs in general. So I do think this team has shown resiliency. I do also think that they are kind of, hitting their stride at the right time, because if you were asking me 3 weeks ago when they were in the middle of losing against, all these bad games, I would say no, they had no chance. But they, even in these losses, they have responded really well. And just like we talked about, we kind of knew that the last 3 games were kind of going to go the way that they were. We knew they were gonna give LA a fighting chance. We knew Denver was going to come out with the coaching change of it all and make it a better game. But we kind of figured that they were going to take the win in Phoenix, and they took care of business. So they're taking care of business, and this is another game that screams like all you guys have to do is take care of your business, and you'll be able to get the job done. So I do agree with Trey that they probably are finding the best stride that they can right now. They probably could be in a better spot, but given everything that's happened in the past just this month, I do think they're a good enough stride to be in heading into the play-in.
Yeah, and I fully agree with that. The resiliency is shown all season long. The resiliency really started early on with this team, and being able to kind of stay in games that they were, going down large amounts in the first quarters, right? And then the resiliency really showed when you fired your head coach and you traded your star player and you were able to go on a 7-game win streak right out of that. Like, it there is resiliency throughout this entire season that I think you can point to a number of areas and say, yes, that is it 100%. And I do agree that they're coming together as a group at the right time, and coming together as a group is the part that kind of hits me, because you got to keep in mind, this is a brand new team in a lot of ways. You got a lot of new players that you had to incorporate post All-Star break, and really a new system if you think about it, because our system went out the door with our coach and our star player. So this is a brand new team than what we saw at the early stages of the season. So to be able to kind of hit a stride now is going to be key. The last little thing I want to talk about is Doug Christie. Doug, I don't have a quote on this, but to kind of paraphrase, he said he wants his guys to come out and have fun, to not play tight, play loose, but controlled. And playing controlled is going to be the key in this game. And this is something that, when I'm looking at this group post All-Star break, the biggest thing you and I and the rest of the Kings fan base and media can agree on is this team completely struggles to not turn the ball over and take care of the rock. And it gets ugly sometimes. You see things happen that you don't normally see on an NBA level. But then you see these nice little, runs where everything works out really well. And you're like, this is the vision. Like, if this was going to be the team we were running year in and year out, this is what we should be seeing. So the turnovers in this, and this is where I'm going to start with the keys to the game, Marcos. The turnovers are probably my number one thing when it comes to this game, because the Kings are awful at transition defense. They're bad enough at defense, but when it comes to transition defense, you might as well just put traffic cones out there. So I need to see this team take care of the rock this week, or rather this game, and I need to see them value every possession. And that was something that was written on the whiteboard in the locker room pregame for game 82, was value every possession. Every possession matters. Every possession counts. You have to carry that same mentality into this game, because it is 100% truth. And I know it's basic. It's something that should be drilled into your mind, when you're first learning the game, right? But you get away from that when you start focusing on the bigger pictures, and you start focusing on the larger things, right? Like, I'm essentially getting away from the basics is what this team was starting to do. And so if you can get back to the basics, take care of that rock, it's going to give you a better chance of winning.
Absolutely. And then on the flip side of that, I think another key is going to be just stay pesky and stay aggressive on defense. I think if we've never been a team that is going to stop you in the half court, on a possession by possession basis. But so if guys like Devin Carter, guys like Keon Ellis, guys like Keegan Murray, if they can get their hands into the pod and make things a little bit messy, force a few turnovers in our own right, then we're going to be in a good spot too. I think if especially some of the games that we've been able to survive bad turnovers is when we've been able to also force turnovers on the other side of things. So I do think there will be a better sense of urgency on the defensive side. I think for both teams, it's going to be a much more physical game. But I do think it'll be interesting to see what lineups, Doug wants to run out. I wonder how many guys we're really going to see, especially with Laravia and Monk out in this game. We're probably going to see an 8-man rotation, and our bench is probably just going to be Jonas, Trey, and Devin, and we're probably and we're just going to run our starters, and we're probably going to see them play 40 minutes, or 35, 40 minutes, and it will be a matter of staying clean, avoiding turnovers, and trying to play with a little bit of pace. I think if we can control the tempo, we're not a good half court offense. Katie Christensen alluded to that a ton during the Phoenix Suns game. This is a team that if you can just get out and go, you got plenty of athletes who can make things work and plenty of guys who can create for themselves. And it's better for this team to just get out and run and set the tone. We obviously don't have a half court offense that isn't just the same, high ball screen up here, just a bunch of motion. It's just the same thing over and over again. So just staying clean, forcing turnovers, and avoiding turnovers. I think, if you do those things against a team like Dallas, who you can beat, even with some injuries that you're dealing with, I think it would be disappointing, regardless of not having Malik or Laravia, if we lost this game, because out of any of the play-in games, and we'll talk about the others in a second here, but this feels like a game that, like, you made it to the play-in knowing that this was going to be your first one, and you felt great about the fact that this will be your first matchup. So I think if we walk out of here with an L, I'm gonna be pretty pissed tomorrow when we hop back on here.
Yeah, I would be too. But you highlighted my second key to the game, which was that play with pace, and I don't have to talk about it too much. The other thing I'll add to it is just the Dallas Mavericks struggle to keep up with pace, and that's something that you've really got to exploit that weakness in them. This basketball is a game of weaknesses, and hopefully your strengths line up against their weaknesses. And in a lot of ways, the Kings have the strengths to compete with their weaknesses. So the Kings just need to come out and play their style of basketball, which shouldn't be the ISO style of basketball. It should be the play with pace, and they should be able to get the win. So, my last key to this is the vet takeover. I need to see a vet take over this game. If all three of them do it, hell yeah, let's go. If two of them do it, great. If one of them does it and it gets the job done, that's exactly what we need. We need Zach to pop off. We need Domas to pop off and or Debo to pop off in this game. And one of those guys, at the very least, has to have a form of control in this game if the Kings want to position themselves for a chance to win this one.
Absolutely. The big three need to be involved. I do think that is one thing this past week and a half has really shown is that these guys might be, even if it's marginal, they are finding some sort of rhythm together, understanding each other a little bit and where these guys want to manipulate the space. So I do think this is a great opportunity for our big three to just, be the best three on the floor. But yeah, I'm feeling good about this game, but a lot can happen, and it's going to be a fun matchup regardless. It'll be great, potentially the last home game in Golden One Center, so we'll see what happens there. It's going to be popping, so we're really excited for it. All right, so let's talk about because we want to be prepared. We want to talk about which option we're feeling more confident in, because if we win, we're operating. If we win, if we lose, we'll have that discussion tomorrow. If they win, they will play either the Grizzlies or the Warriors, and the Warriors somehow fell into the play-in after a really wild week for them too. So, and the Grizzlies, again, we talked about this last week, like, oh, they were a candidate to fall in, and lo and behold, we have those two teams in here. Now, there's a couple ways to look at this, and I want to ask you who you prefer. But when we talk about who we prefer, I do think it's important to think, okay, yes, the Warriors, especially in the second half of the season, has had our number and they look like the significantly better team. But Jimmy Butler got hurt. Steph Curry's dealing with a finger injury. And if the Kings have to go to Golden State in round 2, there's the aspect of, oh, that's way less travel because obviously it's in-state, it's just a bus ride away. Versus, yes, Memphis, you've matched up better against all season long, but you would still have to make the trek all the way to Memphis and then come back if you win to play a series against OKC regardless. So yes, you match up better against Memphis, but you would have that aspect of travel. I don't know if that matters to you, but I wanted to present that context to you. So if we were to win, who would you rather prefer to face in round 2?
I would definitely rather face Memphis. And I think any Kings fan who tells you they'd rather see the Warriors is living in the past. Because if this was last year and we had the same team, I would say, yeah, give me the Warriors because I want that every single time. I feel like my team was the better team. Even in 2022, 2023, when we lost that game 7, like I still felt like the Kings were the better team. So this year, considering everything that's gone down and considering how this year has gone, considering where this team is at currently and the stance of the other two teams, yeah, I'd rather have the Grizzlies, who have gone through a fluctuation of injuries all season long, whose lineups are severely inconsistent because of that. And I would definitely rather have the lack of experience at that game.
Absolutely. And yeah, I'm all for getting Memphis in round 2 because the thing that I've been on was, or that I think we as fans have kind of accepted, is this play-in journey is basically going to be the most exciting part of the next couple weeks. If we advance and play the Oklahoma City Thunder, it would be unrealistic to believe that series wouldn't end quickly. So I think that the Kings as an organization in the front office is praying for this, that they at least get out of this play-in tournament with at least a win, make it seem like, hey, we got back to the same spot we did last year, given everything that we had. And there's even a chance for us to make the playoffs. I do think there's an element of the Warriors. When you look at the 4 teams in the play-in on the West Coast, on the Western Conference, the Warriors have the most pressure by far. And Draymond came out after the Jimmy trades like, we're going to the title, and you don't necessarily do that when you're in the play-in, and the Warriors are 0-3 in the play-in. So it is historically things aren't lining up well for the Warriors. And for them, I think if there was a team that suffered the most from being in the play-in this year, it's going to be the Warriors. And but I do think the Warriors, despite whatever injuries they have, will win. But I would rather face Memphis. I do think we match up better with them. I think they're a more volatile team. You know, they're inconsistent and they just don't have the same level of focus that a team like the Warriors, who have been there, done that, totally have. And yeah, but then the travel thing doesn't bother me because we're going to get rocked by OKC anyway. So the point of this play-in journey is to get through the play-in, and we'll have to do that one step at a time. But I think out of the two, it would definitely be Memphis for me too.
Yeah, and the Kings have really owned the mental battle between the Grizzlies this year too. The Grizzlies a couple different times throughout the various games, the 3 different games we played, they got up in some of our guys' chests and tried to get in our head and weren't rattled. And obviously the Kings were able to, get those last 2 wins, which is where the tempers flared a little bit. So I think Memphis with the kind of players that they have, and you can call it some of the lack of, you know, um the lack of, I'm trying to find the right word to say here.
Maturity, maybe?
Maturity?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think with the lack of maturity, I think it's easy to get a team like Memphis rattled, and that you can really take advantage of, and especially in a guy like, DeMar DeRozan, who you can rattle him, sure, but he's going to be the exact same player. He's going to make what he makes and miss what he misses, and you're not going to have a say in whether he does or doesn't. You can't really move Domantas Sabonis mentally unless you're Draymond Green. So I feel pretty good about the mental battle that the Kings would have against the Grizzlies. So yeah, man, give me the Grizzlies. I would be surprised if the Grizzlies beat the Warriors in that game tonight, but we'll see.
Yeah, so anything can happen. We'll see who we match up with. So Ben and I will be back here tomorrow after the game, win or lose. We're going to do a post-game pod and, talk about what happened, and then look whether if we win, we're talking about the next matchup, doing a quick preview there, and if we lose, we're going to quickly talk about how more we're just going to repeat ourselves, from what we've been saying for the past few weeks. But I think for the play-in, the situation, when we talk about potentially getting Memphis too, I think one thing to consider too about getting in their head was Domas was, he left early the last game that they played because he got clocked in the face and had to get stitches, and I think something else he had to go out there for too.
Yeah, it was when he sprained his ankle or whatever it was.
And we dominated that matchup too anyway. And they lost a key, rookie in Jalen Wells. He hurt, I think it was a wrist injury, and he's out for the rest of the season. So it's, he's a vital part of what they were doing, especially in the second half of the season. So he has definitely been missed for them too. So Memphis, has been up and down, and Ja Morant's antics have been the story of Memphis. It's it's taking his words, tossing them, and blocking out the noise.
Oh, is
So
that what that is?
yeah,
Okay.
this
Totally
as
thought it
described
was
by
something else.
Ja himself. Yeah, it wasn't another form of artillery. So it'll be interesting to see who the Kings get if they win. But that's the goal, is to win tomorrow. And hopefully we're talking about a really good game against the Mavs, where one of the three or all three, everyone popped off. It's an excellent game, and we had nothing to stress about or worry about going into Friday's matchup. But do we have any final thoughts before we head out here, Ben?
Let's light the beam, man. Let's advance to the second one. I mean, look, this is going to be a fun home game in Sac. Sac fans are going to show out. It's going to be loud. It's going to be obnoxious. It's going to be fun. So I'm looking forward to watching this team tomorrow, and hopefully we cook.
Exactly. Battle of two of the most dysfunctional organizations of the season. Given everything that's happened with both of these teams, we will see who comes out on top. But we will definitely be back with you guys tomorrow to talk about that. And hopefully we're in a good mood. Hopefully it's a good win. Even if they win by the skin of their teeth, we'll be talking about a second round matchup. So that'll be fun.
Yes, sir.
All right, y'all. With that being said, this was episode 84 of the Behind the Back podcast. You can hit us up at behindthebackpod13@gmail.com. For all you guys watching on YouTube, the links to our socials are all up above us. For all you audio listeners, the links to descriptions are down below. Please give us a like, subscribe, rate, review, and a follow. We appreciate all the love and support. Again, we are growing each and every week. We love adding more folks to the community. We welcome you guys to the Behind the Back pod team. We love you guys so much. And we're hopefully going to be in a much better mood tomorrow talking about a victory. So I'm Marcos Conanagron. Beside me here, as always, is
Benny the Jet.
All right, y'all. We love y'all. We will talk to you tomorrow. Peace.
Peace.